he hadn't even seen it yet. He is on section 7, instructions given. Read a little article here. It says, most Christians probably would say they want to include God in their plan. As they think about life, they want His blessings and guidance, and they want His enabling grace to sustain them through whatever comes their way. Believers want to draw on His strength as they live out their plans. However, the Bible has a different perspective. God doesn't want us to include Him in our plans. Rather, He wants to include us in His plans. As we yield our lives to His perfect purpose, we will accomplish far more in and through us than we could imagine. Numbers 33 recounts how Israel arrived at the Jordan Valley, where they could see the land God had promised their ancestors. God told them He was giving it to them, but they needed to act on His instructions. As you study this passage, consider the balance between God's power and our actions. The Lord does not simply do all the work as we sit idly by. Rather, He includes us in accomplishing His perfect plans for the sake of His kingdom. Reflect on how He might be calling you and the adults in your group to take action on His instructions for His glory. So that tells me I've had some things backwards at times when I ask God to be with me when I should be asking Him to make me willing to be with you. And follow His plans instead of trying to get Him to follow mine. So we'll start over here on page 64 in the big lesson book. Instructions given. God's plans require believers to act on the instructions He gives. We've all seen it. The for sale sign was removed from the plot of the land. Workers show up and conduct the survey. They put little orange marker flags in the ground. Trenches and holes are cut and dug. The ground is leveled. Concrete trucks show up. Construction crews arrive at the site day after day. In a few months, the house, subdivision, or apartment complex is complete. Every step occurred according to a plan that someone developed beforehand. Why is it important to follow the plan when doing construction? What happens when we don't?
Let's see.
House will fall down.
Back in 2018, I was working for a company called T&M Construction. It wasn't a big company, it was a temp agency. I was called one morning to go out and put together a scaffolding system on a job site because they were putting up a new gym over at Northern High School. I get over there, I'm scaffold certified from Job Corps, and I start putting the scaffold together. About lunchtime, I put a sign out asking, making sure nobody went over there and tried to climb on it. Well, somebody went over there and removed 3 or 4 pieces off the scaffolding and put them on a separate plate. And about 30 minutes later, 2 guys fell off the roof and got injured. And the boss immediately came to me and asked what happened. I said, I have no clue. It was put together properly, so somebody must have done something while I was away. You know, the company got 2 lawsuits against it, so.
Anybody else?
If you know, in construction, you might skip something
You know,
that's very important.
I've seen pictures like building a bridge, you know, they come from both sides. And if they a foot off down here, by the time they get over here, they won't even line up the lanes. And I've seen pictures of
That's pretty amazing right
happening.
there.
Mhm. My brother was a draftsman for Carolina Steel. They sent him through school. And every time I go downtown, and I think it's on M Street, that big bridge that goes over railroad tracks, he helped draw that bridge.
Oh, yeah.
And I think about that a lot of times, how much he had to know to get the angles just right. And you know, a lot of that steel is kind of bent for the flex in it anyway. There's a lot that goes on inside of it. So that gives a pretty good reason to follow God's instructions, doesn't it? To do it like He tells us.
Make it go a little smoother.
Yes, sir. Instead of having so much confidence in ourselves, we don't think we need Him. Gives us that much more reason. Understand the context. Numbers 26, 1 through 36, 26, 1 through 36, 13. When God first called Abraham, he promised that he would have offspring as numerous as the stars in the sky and sand on the shore. God also promised the land of Canaan to Abraham and his descendants. Then he made the same promise to Isaac and Jacob. The Lord, speaking through an angel, changed Jacob's name to Israel at Peniel. From Jacob's 12 sons would come the 12 tribes of Israel, with the exception of Levi and Joseph. From Levi would come the Levites, those who would serve as the priests of God's people. Rather than inherit property in the promised land, they would be given a place in each tribal territory. Concerning Joseph, recall he had been sold into slavery by his brothers. He became second in command in Egypt through God's providence. God used him to save his brothers from starvation when famine hit their homeland. Joseph eventually brought his entire family, including his father Jacob, to live in Egypt. Jacob Scriptures refers to Joseph as the prince of his brothers in Deuteronomy 33:6. Joseph's inherited property was divided between his two sons who were born in Egypt, Ephraim and Manasseh. Now we talk about Joseph here. He was the one his brothers were so jealous over, wasn't he? He was the youngest and his father showed him favor and they didn't like that. So they decided they'd get rid of him. So they dug that pit and put him down in it. Then when I guess it was a caravan of slave owners and stuff came by, they sold him to them. And to try to disguise it, his brothers put lamb's blood on his jacket and took it back to his father and said he'd been killed by a wild beast. But he ended up in the land of Egypt, where the king found favor in his eyes of Joseph and put him mainly second in charge of the whole land, didn't he? And he helped get them through the famine by telling them how to grow the crops and how much to store each year out of each one. And in the long run, he ended up saving his own family even after what they had done to him. So that was kind of like the story, that was a little bit about the story of Joseph. Each tribe was made up of several clans. A clan consisted of individual families that were related by blood or marriage. The head of each family was considered an elder. They helped guide and govern the family and thus the clan. The social structure was therefore like a series of concentric circles. The smallest unit was the family, which was led by the elder. Families that were kin formed clans. The related clans formed a tribe. The 12 tribes made up the nation of Israel, both as a people and a land. And it tells us to read through Numbers 33, 50 through 56, and 34, 13 through 15, paying close attention to the text mentioning a family, clan, or tribe. What was the advantage of organizing the Israelites by these groups?
It's very important to keep families together. That was Malcolm's thought.
Anybody else have any thoughts?
By keeping the families close, they had an opportunity to be responsible for each other and to help each other through the bad times.
Right.
I think at the end of it too, Buster, it's a little bit of accountability that God put on each tribe for their territory.
But he kept the family, basically, like y'all said, he kept the families together, didn't he? So that they could help and look after one another.
That'd be the best way to organize it.
Yep. Explore the text, the land. The Lord spoke to Moses in the plains of Moab by the Jordan across to Jericho. Tell the Israelites, when you cross into Jordan into the land of Canaan, you must drive out all the inhabitants of the land before you. Destroy all their stone images and cast images, and demolish all their high places. You are to take possession of the land and settle in it, because I have given you the land to possess. Verse 50 through 52. God's people had camped in the plains of Moab. from which they could look across the Jordan Valley to the land they would possess. They were a short distance from the Jordan River that separated them from Canaan. The Jordan River was the dividing line for the Israelites. On the east was their past. On the other side was their future. The land that God had promised his people since the days of Abraham. Again, God told Moses that he was to say to his people God had a message. Moses was to deliver it. This showed that God was not finished with Moses, despite how Moses disobeyed him by striking the rock rather than speaking to it. And that was in one of our earlier lessons where it seemed like Moses was trying to take some of the credit for getting the water out of the rock for himself and Jacob. This reminds us that God can still use us even when we have failed him. Our past does not always define our future. There's such a thing as called repentance, isn't there?
Mhm.
The Lord did not say if you cross or in the event you cross. He spoke with absolute certainty. When you cross, the time of God's judgment and the people's wandering was over. What were they to do when they came into the land of Canaan? God's instructions were twofold. First, they were to drive out the inhabitants. Right after God had given Moses the 10 Commandments on Mount Sinai, he promised that he would do, he promised what he would do when his people reached the promised land. He said, I am going to drive out in Exodus 34:11. The command in this verse, Numbers 33 through 52, does not contradict God's earlier promise. He would drive out the inhabitants of the land, but he would use his people to accomplish this. Second, his people were to remove from the land any remnant of idolatry that had been embraced by the generations who lived there. Before the Israelites arrived, the stone images were carvings on the face of a stone, like a three-dimensional picture. These typically depict the people's gods or pagan religious symbols. The cast images were typically made by pouring molten fine metal, sometimes gold, over a wooden frame. Artisans would then carve the fine details with engraving tools. High places referred to the hills and mountains on which the Canaanites built pagan sanctuaries. For example, for hundreds of years before the Israelites arrived, the people in the region recognized Mount Carmel as a place for worship. This may explain why Elijah chose the location for his confrontation with the prophets of Baal. He knew they would be comfortable worshiping their so-called God there. God's decisive victory would show his power over the local man-made deities. Did you know Israel's history revealed that they failed to follow the Lord's commands in these verses? Their exile in Assyria and Babylonia was largely due to the presence and pursuing the gods of the nations that surrounded them. And it gives us several books and chapters and verses to read. Verses 23, after ridding the land of current inhabitants and destroying all vestiges of their pagan worship practices, only then could the Israelites take possession of the land. This meant the land they would inhabit would not be the same as what was there now. It may have been the same regarding its geography and climate, but little else. Its culture, belief system, religious practices, values, government, and social organization were to be transformed. The only reason the Israelites could inhabit the land was because God had given it to them. Why was it important to destroy the idols and high places devoted to the gods?
There's only one God, that's Lord Savior.
And he didn't want
No
to.
other idols.
It's actually to remove all temptation.
Yeah.
Yep.
You
And
know,
they
if
knew
they
that.
had, if they had done what God had told them to do, look how different Israel would be today.
Yeah.
It's, they never got over this.
Well, and I think one of the reasons they didn't get around, they tried to use some of them for profit by collecting taxes off of them, didn't they? And that's like a lot of other things. You get one person that comes in that maybe doesn't believe like you and I do, eventually he'll turn somebody toward his way. Somebody's curiosity will be disturbed just enough that it'll take their mind and thoughts off of God. And, hey, I'd like to see what this is like, you know.
You can be like a little cancer, just
Yeah,
eating
just moving around among the
Right.
people.
Yeah. But if they had done, I know this is all a story, all these stories are a story that God planned to teach us. But if they had been able to accomplish what he told them to do at that time, Israel would be totally different today. They don't have as much land now as they did right here.
They may have about half of what they had right here.
Yeah, I mean, it changed, this story changed history of the whole world.
Yep,
By the same token, that Old Testament points to the New Testament. If we Christians today had done all we were called to do,
yeah.
the world might be a different place today.
I think Helen Lynch said it one day that the Bible is an instruction manual.
Yeah, that's all, it tells us everything we need to do. It's like
Right.
buying one of these things from who is it that sells this furniture and stuff, and you'll follow the instructions, you'll get it together. I think we had this discussion last week
Yeah.
about if you don't have 2 or 3 nuts and both left over, something's wrong.
He was talking about the scaffolding that reminded me when I was working, it was Caribbean at the time. We had a big warehouse in the back that had a bunch of metal shelving, and they were getting ready to change it into offices, and we were at lunch one day, and we heard this lamb bang crashing. I mean, it was big, we saw dust coming, and this guy had gone back and took all the bolts out of all this shelving, and it just went
Was David
came
over there?
through. Huh?
Was David over there?
David. Oh, no.
Look, like I said, look, you ain't blaming me for this. I am scaffolding certified. I'm sure
I couldn't finish
that.
that.
It came through the side wall, and we went running in there, and little Woody was a little short guy, he looked like a Pillsbury Doughboy wearing all that sheetrock. Because, I mean, it crashed. I was wondering he didn't get hurt, but.
Well, like I said, the guys, as soon as I heard what happened, about the two guys' access, I rushed out there to inspect what was going on. All I saw was 2 guys laying there with a broken arm and a broken leg, and I'm like, okay, so who's the moron who came out here and did this?
I already lost my place.
The task,
Huh?
I think it's the task.
Yeah, on the next
At the
page.
top of page
Yep,
66.
it's the task.
Yep, the task. Key doctrine. To God will the highest love, reverence, and obedience. See Deuteronomy 6:14 through 15, and James 1:22. You are to receive the land as an inheritance by lot, according to your claims. And when they speak of lots here, that was the way a lot of times they made a decision on things, because they put their full faith in God, and they knew that every house casting lots came out, it was God that caused it to be that way. It's kind of like when you draw a short straw. I know all of us have done that, haven't we? They would have the short straws, they'd have several straws, and they would let each tribe pull one, and the short straw got his pick. That'd be like casting lots, or even flipping a coin between 2 people. You are to receive the land as an inheritance by lot according to your clans. Increase the inheritance for a large clan and decrease it for a small one. Whatever place the lot indicates for someone will be his. You will receive an inheritance according to your ancestral tribes. But if you don't drive out the inhabitants of the land before you, those you allow to remain will become barbs in your eyes and thorns in your sides. They will harass you in the land where you will live, and what I had planned to do to them, I will do to you. Verse 54, the land was an inheritance. God had told Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and their descendants would live in this land. People of this generation who had never met the patriarchs were to be the recipients and the beneficiaries of the promise God made centuries earlier. God could give them the land because it was His. The earth and everything in it, the world and its inhabitants belong to the Lord. Each of us is merely a steward, a caretaker who dwells here for a limited number of days. And that's exactly what our life is. And the apportionment of land would be decided by casting lots. The Israelites did not see this as leaving it to chance. They understood God could work through the process. The lot is a cast into the lap, but its every decision is from the Lord. So they totally relied on the Lord when they cast lots, didn't they? They knew they had no power over it. Only God could direct somebody to pick whatever straw they needed to pick. The book of Numbers carries its name because the numbers matter. The book opens with the Israelites conducting a census. The book closes with a second census taken on the plains of Moab 40 years later. The purpose of the census was twofold. First, the numbers gave the leaders an idea of how many military-age men would be available to lead in the conquest of the land. Second, the larger clans would receive the larger territories, meaning more inhabitable space. Having all the clans or families units living together in the space apportioned according to the forefathers' tribe gave greater importance to the tribe. No family or clan would be unimportant or excluded. So God was being fair to all of them, wasn't he? He was just doing it by size because he realized that the larger clans needed more land to live in. Verse 55 through 56. The Lord warned what would happen if his people did not drive out the land's current inhabitants. The word translated barbs referred to small but sharp objects that could splinter someone's eyes. The result would be discomfort, infection, and maybe even blindness. The lesson was that even the smallest remnant could inflict unbelievable damage. The thorns in their sides could cause discomfort, pain, and even an infection. God's purpose was not just to run the people out, but also to remove their idolatrous beliefs and pagan practices. God knew the damage these traditions would do. Talking about a splinter in your eye. Have you ever been grinding or something without safety goggles on and you can't even, it's so small you can't even see it. But a piece of metal in your eye, every time you blink it feels like it's ripping your eyeball out. So I can imagine the pain that comes with that. And as far as the thorns in your side, I think I told you one time I was cutting grass on a lawnmower, and there was a huge bush of thorns. And I said, well, I'll just run over those and get rid of them too. That's not how it works. It's really amazing, because when I hit those thorns, instead of them spreading out, they folded over me. And then I had to back that lawnmower up out of there, and I don't know how many thorns I ended up in my back trying to get them over. But that could be very painful to you.
She's over there smiling like she remembers the count.
Okay. Verse 56.
It's hard.
See, you better, doctor. Verse 56 carried a powerful warning. As mentioned earlier, God had said he would drive out the people of the land. In this verse, he was saying that just as he promised to drive the people out of Canaan, he would do the same to his people if they did not obey him. He would drive them out of the promised land. How serious was God's command in this verse? The people's lack of compliance and how they embraced the pagan worship beliefs and practices led to the Assyrians and Babylonians overtaking the people and conquering the land centuries later. What principles do you glean from these verses that could help you live a life of obedience to God? Just the thought of the pain he can inflict on you for not.
He's watching, he's in
Yeah.
control. Those thorns still bother Israel now to this day.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the Palestinians.
They say that Canaanite DNA is all around them right now.
Yeah.
They were cursed, that was a cursed people from way back in, anyway, that
Try,
they
I'm
said it's still
trust
around
and
them.
obey and follow God's way, which is prayer. The first thing we should do with any matter is pray.
That's right.
And then, do as God is leading us through the scriptures.
Yeah, that's right. It's just like I said earlier, you know, it's not us saying, well, God be with me. It's God, let me be with you. Let me be willing to do what you want me to do and not what I'm asking you to do. But sometimes we get hard-headed and high and mighty and we think we already know the way and all we want him to do is just follow with us, isn't it? You know, how many times they've seen a sticker on the car that says, God's my co-pilot? No, he's not. He's driving that car. I'm just sitting there so somebody can see somebody through the windshield. He's doing the driving.
But he'll tell us, he'll tell us through the scripture and prayer, he'll tell us yes, no, or maybe.
That's right. And I've always thought, you know, you hear people going in places stealing something and they get ran out, locked up. I was self-employed. I went some places that had some pretty expensive stuff in it. But I never seen anything that I wanted so bad I'd steal it. I would go to management and ask them. There's only two answers they can give you, yes or no. And helps you stay honest and out of jail too.
You reap what you sow,
That's right.
so.
That's what happening to me and Skylar right now. That's my partner in crime.
Yeah.
So it's good to follow him, isn't it, instead of having him follow us around. The plan, Numbers 34:13 through 15. So Moses commanded the Israelites, this is the land you are to receive by lot as an inheritance, which the Lord commanded to be given to the 9½ tribes. For the tribe of Reuben's descendants and the tribe of Gad's descendants have received their inheritance according to their ancestral families, and half the tribe of Manasseh has received this inheritance. The 2½ tribes have received their inheritance across the Jordan, east of Jericho toward the sunrise. Verse 13, opening verse of this chapter, delineate the geographical boundaries that the land the Israelites were to inhabit. Doubtless the spies who scouted out the land gave information to Moses, information he used to describe the land to be inherited. Verses 3 through 5 describe the southern border, verse 6. The western border, verses 7 through 9. The northern border, and verses 10 through 12. The eastern border, verses 2 and 29. Form a pair of bookends using the phrase the land of Canaan to describe the land and the leaders who would direct the conquest. The property divisions were not decided by human ingenuity or design. It was according to what the Lord commanded. The land between the Jordan River Valley and the Mediterranean was to be home to 9½ tribes. Followers of Christ are beneficiaries of a spiritual inheritance. The 2½ tribes were the descendants of Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh. They earlier asked if they could live on the east side of the Jordan. The region is known as the Transjordan. The 2½ tribes promised that despite their location, they would support the tribes on the west side of the Jordan as they fought for the land. They vowed to not return to their homes until each of the Israelites had taken possession of his inheritance. Thus, these 2½ tribes would be separated physically from the other tribes, but be united in intent. The tribes received these lands as an inheritance. They understood that ultimately the land was a gift from God after they entered Canaan. The Israelites continued to refer to the land as an inheritance. Verse 15 clarifies the location of the territory for the 2½ tribes. These lands were not less than those on the other side of the Jordan. Various rivers and tributaries ran through the Transjordan and flowed westward toward the Jordan River Valley. Much of the land was ideal for grazing. God was fulfilling the promise he had made to his people. He promised Abraham that the land of Canaan would belong to him and his descendants. He made the same promise to Isaac and Jacob. When the Israelites were enslaved in Egypt, God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. He later promised Moses, I will bring you to the land that I swore to give Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and I will give it to you as a possession. I am the Lord God, ever faithful in keeping that covenant promise. In front of the people with the Jordan River and just beyond to the west with Jericho. Here God was proving that he was keeping his promise. The New Testament explains that followers of Christ are beneficiaries of a spiritual inheritance. Because God always keeps his promises, we, centuries later, can also lift our voice and proclaim, great is thy faithfulness. How do God's promises serve as a motivator to remain faithful to him?
You know, it's kind of funny, I actually look at this and I realize how God promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob he would bring his people in, you know, his future people into the land of Canaan. When he spoke to Moses, he only said, I will bring you to the land. I will not bring you into it.
Well, Moses messed up
Yeah.
when he went against
Struck the
God
rock.
on the rock.
Yeah, because that's when God forbid him to go into the
Right.
land. So he could take them and show it to them, but he couldn't cross over with them.
So that's a
But-
good motivation to remain faithful.
That's
You
right.
just
Yeah.
reminded us of.
We just read on there that he can still use you though.
Yeah.
You know, Pastor Kelly talked about a little bit that this morning with that
Right.
message.
Yep.
I think at this point, he'd already kind of anointed Joshua anyway, take over. He was
Yeah.
already getting ready to lead them out. If God promises something that's eternal, it don't change.
All right, this next section, it says use a Bible dictionary to understand a Bible passage. Read a book canon in a Bible dictionary. The land, people, and gods. Ultimately, the Israelites did not drive out all the land's inhabitants. And God's warning of Numbers 33:55 came true. Joshua's records how the Israelites conquered the Canaanites physically. The book of Judges records how the Canaanites conquered the Israelites spiritually. What factors do you think led the Israelites to fail to obey completely God's command to take the land and drive out its inhabitants?
Well, for one, they
Why do Christians today sometimes stop short of keeping God's commands fully?
For one, they didn't drive out the inhabitants, and they didn't destroy all the idols either.
They didn't have faith, did they? They didn't have the faith they needed to go in.
One of the reasons they might have failed to obey was like you said earlier, that you have one person come into the group that thinks different, he'll start getting other people to think the same way. So I think for them, they didn't drive them out because they were thinking different. And it started to look good to them.
Yeah, it let fear get in their way, didn't it?
Yeah.
They didn't follow God's instructions.
Yeah.
That's right.
I think they even made slaves out of some of them.
Lack of faith, fear and discouragement. Because, you know, when the 12 spies came back, when it 12, you know, 2 of them was the only 2 that came back with a positive report. We can take this, we can do this. And then there was 10 of them saying, oh, no, I don't want to go in there. We can't defeat them. You know, like you said, just 1 coming back saying that would have been enough to make something to start thinking, but you've got 10 of them saying it now.
All 10 of them passed on that trip, but the other 2 made it
And because of that,
to the end.
that some of the Israelites that went in actually picked up the worship of other gods and committed other sins. You know, you're talking about pagans who sacrificed their own children for an offering. And the thing is, God told them, to take away the high places from them too, didn't they? Because that's where they normally built their temples and had their big sacrifices up on the mountain. And then the Israelites turned right around and started going up there and having their religions up there. That was one of the things they disobeyed them in too, wasn't it?
Like Greek history, you'll notice that with everything in Greek and Roman history, their temples were always up on the cliff sides or something. You had to travel long distances just to be able to go up there and worship or anything like that.
And lack of knowledge had something to do with it. You know, here's a generation now that has never seen all this because they had to wander around 40 more years for the first generation to die off and them come into being. So they didn't really have the knowledge that the first generation did they? Maybe the things weren't passed on like they should have been through the families and stuff. But that's what gets me in trouble trying to do something not have the knowledge. I do the same thing. I got the whole book right here before me and still fell up to look what the answer should be.
What's that saying, if you don't know history, you'll repeat it?
Yeah.
How many times has history repeated itself
Yeah.
throughout the church?
But you know, the Israelites, they messed up every time, turn around and, you know, it's just give a little while, they'll forget it, go back to something.
What are we, children of God? That's just like a bunch of children, isn't it?
Yeah.
Get out here and mess up. If you don't watch them, keep your eye on them, keep them in line, they're gonna mess up.
Yeah.
I've told a lot of people this, look at the course of history from Rome, every single empire you've ever noticed that has risen, become great, was destroyed and fell from their own mistakes years later. Rome, China, everything like that.
And you know, and one thing too, I think he wanted to have it totally removed. And that meant women and children too. The thing is, you take a child, you know at 2 and 3 years old, they're already forming a memory. So they're seeing what's going on around them and I think what is it, about 4, they start imitating these things. So you know, to be a child of a bunch of pagans, you're seeing this stuff every day. Now you can remove the parents, but that child has already got visions of this stuff in their head and it never leaves them. And the only way for God to clear that land so the Israelites could come in there and worship only Him was to get everybody else out of it first.
To sterilize it.
To clean it, yeah.
That didn't happen, did it?
No, sir.
And God knew what would happen.
And rebellion and selfishness. That was another reason. Because even us, we've proven that we can be a rebellious bunch too, whatever, something don't go like we think it should.
Bottom line is we're sinners.
Do what?
That's the bottom line is we're sinners and so were they, so.
Okay, apply the text. Following God often requires believers to remove potential distractions. Sometimes some of those distractions may be somebody you love, doesn't it? But you kind of got to push them to the side to get by them to keep going the way God wants you to go. Believers can expect to encounter challenges while following God. The more you follow Him, the more challenges you're going to have. I hate to tell you that.
Yeah.
That's just life. It's got to the point now I just about laugh every time one jumps up in front of me. And the more you learn about the Word of God, the tougher those challenges are going to get too, because the devil's going to try you just to see what you know.
And the more you learn about it, the more you see yourself, how weak you are. How many mistakes and stuff you made.
Can we trust God to keep His promises? You darn right we can. If we can trust anybody, it's God.
What do you have if you don't trust Him?
That's right.
What do you have?
Who was that made the remark? Something about he'd rather die believing there was a God than die how was that, David?
Pastor Kelly put that up one
Yeah.
day.
Yeah,
If you believe, if you don't believe and you die and there's nothing there, then you've lost nothing. But if God is there, you've lost it all. That's not word
Yeah.
for word.
but I find the more I study the Bible, the easier it gets to trust him, to talk to him, to believe in him, to have faith in him. And like I said, the trials get harder too. And it's not God that's testing us. Oh, Satan walking back and forth on the face of the earth and looking for anybody he can devour. Look at poor old Job. Job never did let God down, did he? Anybody got anything else they'd like to add?
This is a mighty good story, Buster, I think. That's, that numbers has been a good study.
I've learned a lot from it. Yeah, we was talking last Sunday too about sometimes you hear a song, somebody make a statement, and you know, hey, that's for me. Yeah, it's God trying to communicate with you. I think about every Sunday when we come in this class, one of y'all make a statement that hits me like that. Now, I don't pay Michelle that much mind, but the rest of y'all do.
I don't know what he said, but I heard my name.
That's what I was telling you about the doctor telling her she was normal.